Welcome back to the Ross Bolin podcast presented by Bolin Media. Today, I want to talk about the state of youth sports in the United States of America. Now, this might be a bit of a controversial topic for some of you, mainly if you're spending like 8 hours a week on organized sports with a kid that's under 10 years old. So I'll preface this by saying, whatever you do with your kid, that's your kid. It's your choice. Do what you think is best for your kid and your family. I'm not judging, no judgment, just sharing my opinions and jokes for entertainment and educational purposes. You do you, player. You do you. This topic came up because this morning a buddy of mine, author Kyle Banduho, who recently released his first book, Movies with Balls, the greatest sports films of all time, analyzed and illustrated, which I've actually got a copy of here on set, and you should buy. He posted something to Instagram about 4 to 6 year old T-ball tryouts where he lives. And the post said it was looking for, quote, hardworking athletes and dedicated parents to join their spring roster. It also specified this T-ball team will have 2 games a week, 1 to 3 tournaments a month, and 1 fundraiser, presumably for uniforms and field maintenance and shit like that. Again, this is for 4 to 6 year old kids, okay? And to be clear, Kyle was posting this to point out like how absurd of a time commitment this is for both little kids, like 4-year-olds, and the parents of those kids. He wasn't just advertising some league. I'm not just throwing him under the bus shamelessly. And before I dive into why I think the state of youth sports in America is at least a little ridiculous, let me touch on why I'm qualified to speak on this topic. I have been an athlete my entire life. God blessed me with jock genetics and an arm like a howitzer cannon. Who could forget that I struck out NFL quarterback Andy Dalton in high school summer ball? Nobody. That's who, because I bring it up regularly. I was involved in organized athletics from like 4 years old when I started T-ball to, I guess, technically 17 years old when I quit high school baseball my junior year because my coach kept making me cut my hair and I just wanted to smoke weed, crush beer pong, and chase girls. Basically the plot of Dazed and Confused, but with baseball instead of football. I think I also participated in frat intramurals in college, but frankly, I was drunk and I don't really remember. But throughout my childhood, I played baseball, basketball, soccer, a couple years of middle school football, but football wasn't my thing. I took golf lessons, learned how to play golf with my grandpa, played a lot of golf, took tennis lessons, played tennis. I played soccer, select soccer, up until high school. Select league is like a level of competition above the regular leagues where any non-athletic regular person can play. I was an all-star in Little League Baseball pretty much every season. I played select baseball too, absolutely loved basketball, but was too short pre-puberty to do any real damage. And then the dudes in high school were dunking, and I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm just gonna focus on baseball. So in high school baseball, I was the best starting pitcher in my grade at a giant 5A high school in Houston. No disrespect to my boy Lalo, who was another really good pitcher for our team, but you know I was 1A and you were 1B, bro. The only reason you got those 1A reps is because you were a bootlicker and I was a bad boy rebel. Point being, I absolutely loved playing sports. Like really, really loved it. It took up a strong amount of time in my childhood. And when I wasn't playing sports or at practice or in a game, you know, I was in my driveway with a tennis ball, bouncing it off the wall, pretending I was like a shortstop in the major leagues or whatever. Like I was obsessed with sports, all right? It took me years, literally years of grieving to move on after I quit. Like it was like a pain in my side that I carried with me. I still love watching sports regularly. If you know anything about me, you know this to be true. And I'm really looking forward to my own kids playing sports because I think sports are an incredibly valuable platform to teach kids about competition, teamwork, individual talent, and really just life in general on the whole. Like one of the magic things about sports is that you can glean life lessons from pretty much any organized sport, whether it be individual like golf or tennis, or team-based like baseball, basketball, football, soccer, etc., so on and so forth. But yeah, ball is life, if you will. So my oldest kid, my little girl, is about to turn 6 years old in a couple of weeks, and my son is about to turn 2 years old 2 days after she turns 6, meaning this whole organized youth sports thing is about to become a prevalent issue for me and for my family and my kids, right? And my 1-year-old loves balls. This guy, soccer balls, baseballs, basketballs, his own balls. He spends a lot of his free time kicking a soccer ball. He says soccer ball. He can't even really say it yet. It could be any ball, really. He just calls them all soccer balls right now and is constantly asking me to play soccer ball with him. And I love it. It's super fun. He's very athletic. He's probably going pro. You can go ahead and put a pin in that. Now, all that being said, 4 to 6 year old T-ball being so serious that there are 2 games a week, presumably at least 1 practice a week as well, and 1 to 3 tournaments a month, which you have to assume take place on weekends. Based on my sports experience as a child, that's when tournaments take place, on the weekends. That's absolutely batshit crazy, man. And if you're like, oh, well, dude, that's an example of one league. No, friends. This is like the norm for youth sports and has been for many years. Like, it's been, I would say, the version of it that existed when I was a kid was already pretty ramped up and getting towards abnormal. And then over the last 25, 30 years, it's just gotten more and more intense. And it's an incredibly serious time, energy, and financial commitment starting at a very young age. And it's a massive, massive industry at this point. According to the internet, which is never wrong, more than 60 million American children participate in youth sports in the United States annually. And the youth sports industry in the U.S. is estimated to be worth between $30 and $40 billion annually. But the industry is even larger than that if you factor in spending by the government, philanthropy, and the private sector. Crazy, crazy money is the point. And with all things, you ask, like, why would it be so insane? Like, money is the answer. Money is the driving force between most of the crazy shit that we do, at least in this country, but probably in all capitalistic societies, right? So to take it back to the Post advertising the T-ball league, there are no hardworking athletes at 4 years old. Hardworking athletes? 4-year-olds? That's just, these are little kids who are still learning their letters and numbers and shit. Some of them still piss their pants. Hardworking athletes is just an insane, I mean, I get what they're trying to, like, convey, but come on, man, what the fuck? They still regularly refuse to eat the incredibly delicious and nutritious meals their parents make them, instead demanding irrational things like popsicles and muffins constantly. 4 to 6 year olds don't even have, like, what I would describe as a general understanding of the world around them yet. Like, they don't, the whole world to them is just like everything within 20 feet of them at any given time. Like, they don't have, I mean, it's just, their world is so small. It's their family, their little friends, their little school, their daycare or whatever. Like, for 4-year-olds, there's not a whole lot going on. They're not mature enough to be hardworking at really anything. Not in the way we think of hardworking in America. So it doesn't make sense to me. I just don't get, like, how they're going to spend somewhere in the ballpark of like 5 hours or more of extracurricular time grinding on the T-ball field every week. That just strikes me as insane. And honestly, a lot of this opinion is formed on the back of the fact that I don't have 5 extra hours a week to dedicate to sports right now. And that's just if you're talking about one kid. If you got 2 kids, I don't even know how this maths, like how you structure your life professionally and personally to allow for this sort of dedication for a child that young. I guess credit to you guys who are doing it, but like, what? Like, where are you people finding the time for that much sports at that young of an age? Like, this is how a day goes for me. I wake up, my wife and I get our kids ready for school. We feed them, we clothe them, we drive them to school, we drop them off. Then we go to work. We work until they get out of school. We get to spend like an hour, and change with them before dinner. Then we make dinner, we eat dinner. Then we do bath time, we do bedtime, and we put the kids to sleep. And then we get ready for bed ourselves and hopefully spend some time making passionate love before we pass out. And that's a day. That's a day. And that's every day. Like, I fell asleep at 9 p.m. last night, which is not normal. It's usually closer to like 10:30 or 11, but I was exhausted. And Ripley on Netflix is basically melatonin. So I passed out at 9 p.m. last night, which takes me back to this large concern. Like, between your own personal and your work schedule, how this shit are you carving out several hours a week for fucking T-ball, bro? T-ball. If you never played T-ball, there's a tee, which is essentially a rubber base with a big pole coming out of it, a rubber pole. It's rubber. And you stick the baseball on the top of it, and then the kid comes up and stands there and whacks it off of the tee, in theory. Usually they miss and hit the tee, and you got to put the ball back up and you repeat this process until they hit the ball somewhere into fair play, which can sometimes take 5 to 10 minutes per kid because they suck, because they're 4, and they don't have this kind of fucking fast twitch muscle memory yet. Like, they just, and there's, I get that this is when they learn. Like, this is why you start them early so they can learn or whatever. But like, yeah, man, like in your backyard, like fucking three tournaments a month on the weekend, 2 games a week, practices. What the shit? And again, when they're getting closer to like 10 years old or whatever, or older, and if you've got a kid that is genuinely athletic and interested and invested in sports, or just, they don't even have to be athletic. If they really want to be a part of it, they really want to play, like, go for it, man. I'm not saying there's anything wrong there. But like, most 4-year-olds don't have the slightest clue what they want on a minute-to-minute basis. Their brains are very, very differently wired than ours. And like, in theory, sports are a healthy, confidence-building, educational experience to teach you about all the things I mentioned earlier, like competition and teamwork and life. But in reality, it's mostly parents living vicariously through their NARP children, putting excessive pressure on them to perform in an area in which they aren't even personally invested, and further exhausting their already exhausted families and resources. That's the reality of the situation. I've seen the videos my friends and acquaintances post of their small children at T-ball, okay? I've seen it. I know what's going on out there. I'm not even there yet. My kids have not done this yet. But I know what there is to look forward to here, okay? The kids are whacking the ball and running straight up the middle of the diamond over the pitcher's mound into the fucking outfield, or taking off toward third base after whiffing entirely, or laying on the ground in the outfield picking flowers and boogers, all right? They're not hardworking athletes. They're little kids. They're small children with the attention span of a gnat who don't have a shot in hell of properly pronouncing Shohei Ohtani, okay? So they... Miss me with the hardworking athletes you're attempting to recruit to your 4 to 6-year-old T-ball league, bro. Miss me with that. And I've seen the videos they post of like 5-year-old soccer games as well. And these kids are kicking the ball the wrong way, running off the field so their parents have to chase them, and shitting their pants in goal. It's an insult to the game of soccer, just like the T-ball that they have for 4-year-olds is an insult to the game of baseball. And I'm not saying it shouldn't exist. I'm just pointing out that searching for hardworking athletes to dedicate several hours plus a week to T-ball is a bit absurd because of the facts I am stating. Right? I know you got to find something to do with the kids. I know parenting is hard. And for a lot of these sports parents, this is essentially daycare. You drop the kid off at practice. You drop him off at the game. You get to sit on your ass in the stands if you're a good parent. If you drop him off and you don't even watch the game, you're a shit parent. I get it, but it's occupying some time. It's keeping you from having to parent. I get it, and I'm not even saying that's bad. The part about dropping him off and not even going to the game is bad. If you haven't seen the beginning of Hook, it creates a rift. Your children might be kidnapped by Captain Hook if you do shit like that. But I get it. As a parent of young children, I understand it is very challenging to keep them entertained, occupied, educated, fed, clothed, doing like hygienically sound, like brushing teeth and hair and I get it. It's tough. It's a challenge. It's exhausting. But like, it does feel like that's a large part of the reason this industry exists at the scale it does, is because you people simply don't know what to do with your kids. You just don't know. But I don't know if 2 to 3 games and 1 to 3 tournaments and a full-blown T-ball league for 4-year-olds is supposed to be the answer. There has to be like a less intense version of this that can be there for that. Like that's what it used to be, a less intense version. And I don't think they had this type of shit in the 70s, 80s. Like I don't maybe in the 80s when it started to really bubble up, but like they didn't have this shit in the 60s, 70s, like golden age of America. They didn't have this level of intense sports for fucking toddlers, bro. They don't have like anyway, as a result of all of this, youth sports participation in America has consistently declined sharply year over year since my childhood, because we're asking too much of these younger kids and their families, and a big part of it, outside of the financial and time commitment hurdles that you have to clear to be a part of this shit, is that the kids are getting burned out. So kids are having all this focus on sports at such a young age, and then by the time that they're like actually competitive sports taking place in late middle school into high school, they don't want to play anymore because they're fucking sick of it, or they were never good at it in the first place, or they never liked it in the first place, right? So there's the point is, this massive industry that's been built out of youth sports is not growing the game, if you will, to use a sports term. It isn't working like that. It's shrinking the game. It's less kids are playing sports for less time as a result of how intense everything has become and how it's been turned into this industry that's all about money, instead of being focused on like what would actually be good for kids. How much sports can a 4-year-old actually handle? Like that question is irrelevant to the people that are raking in money, industrializing youth sports. So to reiterate, I am not against youth sports. I participated in them heavily, and I see the benefits. I love sports. #sports. But I am definitely questioning the time commitment, energy commitment, and financial commitment a lot of these leagues for like 4 to 6-year-old kids are demanding. Like 1 game a week with no practices or some shit, and I'm in. Because for a 4-year-old, man, like you can do the practice yourself with the kid. You don't need organized practice. Like, come on. Like, I guess 1 practice before the season starts or something, but like, dumb it down, man. Like 1 game a week with less of a time commitment, less of a financial commitment, like that seems good. But like 2 games a week with 1 to 3 tournaments a month, meaning potentially like an extra several games a month, because the way tournaments work is the more you win, the further you go, right? So like you could say up to like 15 more games a month with the tournaments, like for 4 to 6-year-olds. That shit makes sense to me in high school, maybe even late middle school, if they're really good and really dedicated and really into it. But like 4 to 6-year-olds is fucking, you are higher than I have ever been, brother. And like, I will teach my kids in the backyard, and they will still stomp out your little anxiety-ridden NARP when shit gets real in 8th grade. So I'm just kind of amazed at how crazy, because at my age, where I'm 37, so I've got a lot of friends and acquaintances whose kids are getting a little old, like 7 to 10 years old and whatnot, right? And I know a lot of people with 4-year-olds, 6-year-olds, some even with like 12, 13-year-olds. And I see how much time these people are putting towards sports on, like, you basically don't have a weekend anymore. It's just baseball, or it's just soccer. Like, and that's, How are you sane? How are you maintaining sanity? Because it's going to break me. This is basically all just a warning for like in a few years when you see me utterly detached from reality because I have no more free time to myself and no more money and no more energy. It's because I'm doing fucking 2 games a week and 1 to 3 tournaments a month in a fundraiser for 4 to 6-year-old T-ball. All right. In closing, I will share a story from my time in Little League Baseball, what I consider to be a classic. When I was around 12 or 13 years old, there was a really good pitcher in the age group below me in Little League Baseball named Ben. And Ben was so good that Ben played up a year with my age group to be fair to the kids in his age group, to like spare them being completely and utterly dominated by Ben. Ben was really good, right? And Ben's dad was one of these ultimate sports dads, like a short, portly little man who always had a massive hog, just a ludicrous amount of chewing tobacco in his mouth at all times, was always spitting, even if he was addressing children. He cursed a lot too, which I really thought was super entertaining when I was like 7. But super nice guy, Ben's dad, but he took youth sports probably about as seriously as you can without being arrested. So one game, and again, I'm like 12 or 13, so puts Ben at like 11 or 12, right? One game, Ben was pitching. He's up there on the mound doing his thing when he lost control. He walked one batter, then another. So another hitter steps up to the plate. Ben throws another ball, then another ball, then another ball. And the crowd at this point has grown silent and awkward. Then his dad, who is sitting in the stands watching, gets to his feet and yells, "Throw strikes, Ben!" And Ben, standing up on the pitcher's mound with God and the whole world watching, just immediately turns, looks dead in his dad's eyes, and yells back at the bleachers, "Shut up, Dad!" And this was 20 years ago, and me and my family and even some of my friends who weren't even there still laugh about it multiple times a year because it was so priceless and like such a perfect encapsulation of everything that's like just ridiculous about youth sports and the parenting culture around it. And like, Ben's dad wasn't a problem. He was a great dude. But there were lots of parents who were a problem in youth sports. And I remember this from my time in youth sports, and it has only escalated since then, where there are people out there bitching about playing time for their 6-year-old, getting into fights with each other in the bleachers, fighting with the coaches, coaches fighting coaches on the field. Like, it's gotten so out of control. We're on like decade 3 almost of discussing this as a country, and yet it keeps ramping up in the wrong direction and participation keeps diving down in the wrong direction. So yeah, in hindsight though, Ben did go on to play baseball on scholarship in college. So maybe it was worth it. If you're a parent like me, or maybe you just have an incredibly busy schedule, it can be really challenging to get into a good fitness routine and stick with it so that you're taking proper care of your body. Well, with the new year, there is new hope, and with today's sponsor, FitBod, you can get your fitness routine back on track for 2025. Yesterday, I did my 280th FitBod workout, 280. I started using FitBod in 2023 when they became a sponsor of our show, and I tried it out, and I loved it. They've become one of my favorite sponsors ever because I legitimately rely on their app to become huge. Before I started using FitBod for years, I did the same workouts every time I worked out, and that mundane repetition wasn't working. I plateaued hard. Plateaus are the enemy of all who strive to become huge, as you know. Since I started using FitBod, though, I've put on 20 pounds of muscle. I'm in the best shape of my life. Many have started calling me Ripped Ross. Others call me Fit Bill. And occasionally when I'm in public, someone will shout, "You killed Bill Chungus!" Plus, I've completely avoided dad bod so far. All good things. FitBod is like having a personal trainer in your pocket that builds you a fully personalized workout. It lets you select your fitness goals, like how many workouts you want to do each week, what you want to focus on, whether it be like strength training or general fitness or powerlifting. You select what equipment you have available, if any, and your experience level, and it crafts personalized workouts just for you. So whether you go to a gym and you have a membership, or you've just got some weights at home, or you literally don't have anything, it will build you a workout. If you don't have anything, it'll just give you body weight workout stuff to do. And with every exercise, there's a how-to video breaking down exactly what to do with an expert showing you exactly how to do each movement, and also a text description to help you understand what you're doing. So no matter your level of experience in the gym, you're good. I've got my Fitbod app pulled up right now, and for today's workout, I'll be doing deadlifts, barbell curls, close grip bench press, dumbbell skull crushers, reverse barbell curls, and Supermans, hitting hamstrings, biceps, triceps, and lower back today. Can't wait to get huge. Level up your workout and get huge with me. Join Fitbod today to get your personalized workout plan. Get 25% off your subscription, or try the app free for 7 days at fitbod.me/Ross. That's fitbod.me/ROSS, fitbod.me/Ross. You can see the link and the details in the description of this episode. Before we move on from sports, another funny anecdote. When I watch sports in my house, my little 5-year-old stepdaughter, she always asks me, like, which team is ours, Dada? And sometimes my answer is obvious, right? It's the Texans or Astros or Rockets, whatever Houston sports team I'm watching that I'm a huge fan of. But other times, if I'm watching a game in which none of my teams are participating, I tell her, you can pick whichever team you like, babe. And sometimes I tell her, like, one time the Texans were playing the Chiefs in the regular season, and she did the whole, song and dance, which team is ours, Dad? And I said, the Texans. Daddy roots for the Texans. You can root for the Texans with me if you want. And I was like, but Taylor Swift's boyfriend is on the other team. And she was like, oh, really? And they showed Taylor Swift in the box like they always do on Chiefs games. And Travis Kelce came on screen, and I was like, that's him. That's Taylor's boyfriend. And after a few minutes, she kind of looked at me and she was like, Dada, I think I want to root for Taylor's boyfriend's team. And it was a crushing moment. Personally, for me, I was just like, oh yeah, but I played it off well with her. I was like, oh, that's great, baby. You can root for whoever you want for. You can root for whoever you want. You can root for the Chiefs. That's totally cool. Anyway, if none of the Houston teams are participating, she usually picks based on the jersey colors or whatever animal mascot the team has and shit like that. It's cute, right? You love it. It's simple. The other day, I had on ESPN or whatever, and they were showing highlights from all the NFL games. It was between the the noon games and the 3:30 slot, right? They're showing highlights from all the games that have taken place so far that day. And my little girl comes in and she goes, "Which team is ours, Dada?" And I was like, "Oh, well, no, these games already happened. They're just showing us the best parts." And she was really confused. She sat there for a second and was like, "So these aren't real?" And I was like, no, they're real. They're just not happening right now. They already happened. These games already happened, and they're showing us little plays and bits and pieces from each one, the most entertaining stuff. So she's like, when did they happen? And I was like, they happened earlier today. Earlier in the day today. These are called highlights. They're highlighting the most important factors of each game, the most important plays, the most important players. They're just highlights. And so she feigned understanding, and she's like, oh, okay. Well, which team is ours? And that started the entire conversation over. And this went on for 10 minutes before I was just like, hey, you want to watch some Bluey? And she was like, yeah. So turns out explaining the concept of sports highlights to a 5-year-old is not nearly as simple as you'd think it would be. And you run into shit like this all the time as a parent, and it's hilarious because kids ask, again, to reference our earlier conversation about them not having a fully formed understanding of the world around them yet, they don't know a whole lot. So they're dependent on you to explain to them and teach them things that they know zero about, which gives you a pretty opportune position because in some cases when they ask you about things like, what is tree bark made of? You can just make it up because at some point they're going to learn that from a legitimate teacher who has an education to speak to scientific shit like that. I don't know what tree bark is made up of, so I can say any fucking thing. And then that becomes the truth to their little brain, which is also, a testament to the power of parenthood. You got to be careful. You don't want to teach them stuff that they're going to go around, telling their friends at school that tree bark is made of chocolate or something, because then all the kids are suddenly trying to eat tree bark and this comes back to haunt you. So don't do that. I'm just saying, often they ask you simple questions about things, and sometimes with sports highlights you find yourself really, really struggling to explain because you've never had to explain that to another person before. At no point have I had to explain the difference between a live sporting event and sports highlights to someone, so I had no practice doing this. Now I have a little bit. I still don't know the answer, though. Like, if you can't grasp that all of the games are filmed and all of them are broadcast on television, and that later, after those games have ended, there's a show where grown adults sit around in suits and tell you about the games that already happened, specifically highlighting the best and most exciting plays from those games, then we're dead in the water, and I don't know what the fuck to tell you. So you just go to Bluey, and that becomes your answer. Anyway, shout out to everybody doing Dry January, by the way. Big props. You're at the halfway point. It's January 15th as I speak. So yeah, we're halfway through January 15th. That's halfway through the month of January, because I think there's 31 days in January, if I remember correctly. See, that's a perfect example. If one of my kids said, "Daddy, how many days are there in January?" I'd have to reference a calendar, because I don't know. Doesn't February have like 29 days? Isn't it the shortest month in the calendar? Is that the next one? Do I at least know that? See, I'm not confident. I think that's correct, but I'd have to whip out the phone and make sure, which I'm now doing because I'm questioning everything. 28 days in February. Son of a bitch. See, I don't even know. I don't even fucking know. I do know you're halfway through Dry January, though. I've been dry since October of 2017, not to get on my high horse, so this shit is nothing new to me. But as an outside observer, I think this is the first January since being sober that I realized this is a terrible, terrible month to quit drinking. Terrible. Like the worst month to quit drinking, probably, outside of December. If I had to pick a worse month, I think December is probably even harder. But you've got, in January, you've got the college football playoffs. So you just can't drink for that. If you're into sports like I am, you just can't. You're just watching all the football games in the afternoon at the bar sober. Like, that sucks. You got the NFL playoffs, sports. You got the NBA season heating up. These are all things people like to drink adult beverages when they watch sports. It's a thing. It's very hard being a sober sports fan. There aren't that many of us. There just aren't. So Dry January for sporting reasons alone sucks. You can't watch the Natty drunk. You can't watch the NFL playoffs drunk. You're just sober watching regular season NBA basketball. That's brutal, man. It's tough. You just survived another stressful holiday season, and now you're back at work getting your ass kicked every day, and you can't drink? Woof. So you people are making real sacrifices to start your year off on a healthy note, and you should be commended for that. Congratulations. But yeah, January, rough month to go in dry. Just entering a brand new calendar completely dry. No lube. Yuck. They should have made it like Dry June or something, like in the middle of the year, you know? Because first month of the year, that's a beating. Keep it up, though. I'm not saying you shouldn't. Don't quit now. Don't tell your friends and family you listen to the Ross Bolin podcast and a 7 years sober guy talked you out of sticking through to the end of Dry January. You're halfway through, you alcoholic trash. Stick with it. You got this. You can do this. You know what, though? I'll recommend some other things you could do in January if Dry January is too tough for you and next year you want to do something a little different. So you got no jacking January, where you can't self-pleasure for the entire month. Because we all know at this point that No Nut November is for weirdos and incels, right? Have we made peace with that yet? No Jack January is for winners and warriors. You could also do Joyful January, where every day you write down something you're happy about on a sticky note and you stick it on your bathroom mirror, and then over the course of the month you see more and more things you're happy about, and that just gives you a nice little lift to start the day. Hell, you might find yourself keeping the sticky notes up all year round. There's No Jail January, where you try to stay out of jail the entire month. That's a good one. If you're regularly going to jail, you should probably try No Jail January. Jam and Jelly January, where you try a new jam or jelly every day. You got to be a big jam and jelly head for that one, though. That's not normal. Plus, I'm not sure there are 30 jellies and jams. There are. I've been to a farmer's market. I've been to a farmer's market and walked up to the table and had my fucking mind blown by how many different jellies and jams there were. I didn't know you could make jelly and jam out of a lot of things they make jelly and jam out of. It's not just grape or strawberry. There's all kinds of them. You should try them during Jam and Jelly January. That might be the one I do next year. There's also Jumping Jack January, where you do 100 jumping jacks a day. I just wanted to provide some alternate options. That was the entire point of this segment. I was like, what else could we do with January? Because I do genuinely believe dry January sucks. It gets talked about too much, for one. It's annoying. Everybody that's doing it is annoying about it, even without meaning to be. Almost like CrossFit people. You know? Like, as a sober person, I don't like I know I talk about it on the show, and it's because, in large part, I want to try to help other people who should not be drinking alcohol because they make bad decisions and are ruining their body and mind. But I genuinely do not like talking about sobriety with like other people in the real world. If it comes up, I'll talk about it, but like I don't bring it up unless I have to. Like I have a neighbor who lives down the street from me, like several houses down, and he's got little kids. Anyway, point is, we were at the neighborhood playground, and he was like, "Hey man, every Wednesday I host a happy hour for all the dads in the neighborhood at this bar. Do you want to come?" And I was like, "Oh shit, yeah, oh man, yeah." Like I think it was like at 8 p.m. or something. Which, first of all, as I just mentioned, I went to bed at 9 last night. I was like, "Fuck me, 8 p.m." But I didn't tell him like, "Oh no, man, you know what? I'm actually 7 years sober. I really don't love hanging out at bars that much." And frankly, I have nothing against hanging out at bars anymore. It's just like if I'm gonna do that, I definitely don't want it to be with a bunch of dads that I don't really know. Like, I don't know what they do during that time. I don't really want to find out, like, what they talk about, you know? Like, I know dudes, we have a short list of topics that we turn to in social situations, and I got enough of that in my life. Sports talk, female celebrity talk, what shows are we watching, complaining about your wives. I get it. I got my own friends, you know, and point being, I didn't disrespect this guy or anything. I was like, "Oh, I think this week is kind of busy or whatever," but like it was an awkward situation because I was like, "Fuck, do I have to tell this dude I'm sober? Like we don't even really know each other. That's personal information." So ironically, I share that information with thousands of people on the internet for money, but the point is I wanted to come up with some other solutions for January, and that's all I've got. No jacking January, which I feel like was a hot start. Joyful January, no jail January, jam and jelly January, jumping jack January, and that's it. Those are my recommendations for January of 2026. Pick one, put it on the calendar for next year, and stick with it. I've got a few new rituals going into 2025. I'm setting my alarm for 6:30 every morning now so I can get to work on my Lego set that my wife bought me for Christmas. I'm meditating regularly, and I'm getting back into yoga. Whatever you do differently this year, come into your own way with extraordinary hydration from Liquid IV. Today's episode is brought to you by Liquid IV, powered by LIV Hydra-Science. Liquid IV helps you break the mold with flavors like their new hydration multiplier, sugar-free raspberry lemonade, a bright zero-sugar flavor combining notes of ripe, freshly picked raspberries and citrusy, zesty lemon. Delicioso. Look, a lot of us struggle with drinking enough water every day, and that's why so many people are lugging around these comically large water bottles. I've got one, you've got one, everybody's got one. I personally choose to lug the massive water bottle around every day, but rather than having to refill it 3 times a day, I just dump one of these little Liquid IV packets into it so that it tastes 3 times better with 3 times the electrolytes of leading sports drinks and is significantly more hydrating than water alone. Break the mold and own your ritual and try Liquid IV this year. Just 1 stick of Liquid IV and 16 ounces of water hydrates better than water alone, powered by Live Hydra Science, an optimized ratio of electrolytes, essential vitamins, and clinically tested nutrients that turn ordinary water into extraordinary hydration. 3 times the electrolytes of the leading sports drink, 8 essential vitamins and nutrients, always non-GMO, vegan, gluten-free, dairy-free, and soy-free. Embrace your ritual with extraordinary hydration from Liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use code ROSS at checkout. That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code ROSS, R-O-S-S, at liquidiv.com. Again, details and URL and code in the description of our episode today. For those of you who don't know, this is a huge week, massive week. Finally, after an almost full 3-year hiatus, one of the best shows on TV returns this Friday on Apple TV+, and this is not an ad. This is just a personal endorsement. I am talking, of course, about Severance. Severance Season 2 starts Friday after it debuted in early February, I believe, of 2022. So yeah, almost 3 full years later, due to the complicated internal machinations of large budget television production, it is returning. If you haven't watched Season 1, I'll give you a synopsis in a moment, but if you have not watched Season 1 of Severance on Apple TV+, binge it now. It is one of the best singular seasons of television I've ever watched, and I've watched a lot of TV. I think it's probably good for anybody, but particularly good if you're in the professional world, if you're out of college, if you've had a job for several years. It's probably even better and maybe more depressing if you're like in a very corporate setting with cubicles and, you know, doing grunt work this show was made for you, but also might make you hate your job. But it's fantastic. It's unbelievable. I have watched a lot of TV. Like a stupid amount, to the point that I somehow turned it into a massive part of my career. And this is one of the best TV shows I've ever seen in terms of a singular season in Season 1. So the plot follows a guy named Mark Scout, otherwise known as Mark S., who is played by Adam Scott. And he is an employee of the corporation Lumen Industries. And Mark S. agrees to what is called a severance program, in which his non-work memories are separated completely from his work memories via medical procedure. So he basically becomes 2 different people entirely. Like you took yourself and you split your reality into 2 separate worlds that do not overlap at all. One person at work, one at home, completely severed from each other, hence the name Severance. And the characters refer to these 2 personas as their innies and their outies. And like, so your innie is completely unaware of your outie, does not know what your outie does in terms of family or personal time or any of that, and vice versa. Your outie does not know what it is your innie is doing for work, or like any of the specifics of the job or the company they work for at all. So that's the setup. I can't tell you anymore because it would just bring spoilers into the mix, but that's the setup for the show. It's a fascinating concept because obviously the split of personal life and professional life and the work-life balance is a lifelong challenge for everyone growing up in America. It's a fucking battle. Like you have to try and like scavenge or protect and like maintain as much of your personal life as you can while also making money, because you have to pay for shit like your home and your food and your family and whatnot. So you got bills. We all got bills, right? So yeah, Severance is very, very, very cool. It's super well done. One of the reasons I got into it is because Ben Stiller is one of the creators, and I don't know if he writes it. Let me Google and see if he writes it. But he's one of the directors. He's not one of the writers, it doesn't look like. But he directs it, and it is unbelievable. Ben Stiller was, a comedy icon when I was growing up. Like Zoolander is one of the funniest movies ever. The original Meet the Parents is one of the funniest movies ever. Heavyweights is one of the funniest movies ever. And still, I can't believe it's a Disney movie. It's like such a dark comedy, but Ben Stiller in Heavyweights, unbelievable. Ben Stiller, super, super, super funny, super talented guy. Never seen him in anything serious. I know he's done some serious movies and he's done some dramatic turns in acting, but I've never watched any of those, like whatever that weird movie, like Wally Leaves the World or some shit. Like I never watched any of that. That's not what it's called, but I can't remember and I don't care to look it up. Anyway, I was really intrigued, like Ben Stiller doing a serious TV show about like a heavy subject matter. That's going to be interesting. What's that all about? Watch season 1, and like I said, it's a puzzle box show, so the whole time you're trying to like figure out what's happening. It's very mysterious. It's very like psychological thriller in some ways. The cast is absolutely insane and incredible. What's the guy's name who's John Turturro is in it. John Turturro is fantastic. I think he's like one of the low-key best living actors. John Turturro's in it. He's amazing. Patricia Arquette is in it. She's amazing. Christopher Walken is in it. There's a dude named Trammell Tillman who plays a character named Milchich, who's maybe the best performance on the show. Of course, Adam Scott is amazing as Mark. You got Zach Cherry as Dylan, who some of you may recognize from some other stuff. Anyway, cast is unbelievable. Show is unbelievable. They actually have season 2 is like available to certain class of critics or whatever. And the early reviews of season 2 have been extremely positive. So get caught up as fast as you can if you have not watched this show so you can watch season 2 with all of us. They did a viral marketing campaign yesterday at Grand Central Station in New York City where they basically took a glass cube into Grand Central Station or assembled it there. And then they filled it with actors in business casual miming the mundane motions of office work. And those actors were Adam Scott as Mark, Britt Lower as Helly, and Zach Cherry as Dylan, 3 of the main characters of Severance, and I assume of Severance Season 2, doing a bit of a viral marketing campaign for the show. That was really, really cool because it's like art in the real world, right? And I give them a ton of credit for this because one of the issues I have found with TV nowadays is like, you know, your favorite show, unless it's like one of the highest tier shows on TV, like Squid Game did a bunch of viral marketing, right? They did a bunch of marketing. But like Shogun from Hulu last year, I saw almost nothing about that before it came out. Ended up being the best show of the year, bar none. But they don't spend money marketing these shows until they're absolutely certain they're going to be profitable. They don't confidently back some of these shows. And as a result, there's really, really good TV shows that fall under the radar and get canceled because not enough people are watching them because not enough people even know they exist. So Severance is doing a really good job of like getting out in front of the world and doing marketing and real world viral shit to make sure that people are aware. Season 2 starts up this week. Apple TV Plus is weird where their drops are on Friday, but they typically come out Thursday. So like I Barrett, my co-host on Oysters, Clams, and Cockles, assumed that this might be because like they're going off of some time zone that, you know, is international. So like everybody gets it on Thursday, but people in Australia are getting it on Friday or some shit like that. Anyway, drops Friday, but will probably be available. I'm like 99% sure that it'll be available for us here in the States on Thursday. We will be covering it episodically on Oysters, Clams, and Cockles, my TV and film podcast that I host with Mr. Barrett Dudley and have been doing since 2016. And that show is the reason that this podcast exists because that one existed first and gave me the legs to do this one. We otherwise known as OCC, Oysters, Clams, and Cockles, is available wherever you get the Ross Bolin podcast, otherwise known as RBP. But yeah, so next Monday on Oysters, Clams, and Cockles, we will put out our companion podcast for Severance Season 2, Episode 1, and then you can ride with us all season long. It's going to be a blast, I'm telling you. Unbelievably good show, and I have been waiting a long time for Season 2. I was actually really worried that there wouldn't be a Season 2 based on how long the delay was. But there is, and it's here, and we're really doing it. So yeah. We greatly appreciate you supporting Bolin Media and our shows. We've got some other ones. If you're an F1 fan, right now Formula Bone is the best American-made F1 content on the planet, brought to you by Jared J. Bone Borislow. You can hear or watch Formula Bone wherever you hear or watch the Ross Bolin podcast. It's the off-season for F1 right now, but Jared is dropping hot F1 content all off-season long on Formula Bone, at Formula Bone on social media. We've also got Oysters, Clams, and Cockles, which I already mentioned. Very stoked for the large offering of shows we get to cover this year, including Severance Season 2, The White Lotus Season 3, A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, The Last of Us Season 2. It's going to be a blast on Oysters, Clams, and Cockles this year. Make sure you tune in. Finally, I've got a Houston sports podcast called Banging the Can, where this week I talked about the Texans' playoff win over the San Diego Chargers and their upcoming matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs. We have a chance to shock the world and save us all from another Kansas City Chiefs AFC Championship appearance. Now more than ever, we need to make sure y'all are supporting our sponsors, so make sure you're using those dedicated codes and URLs that are in the description of this episode. Obviously, today we had Liquid IV. Go to liquidiv.com, use code ROSS, get 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today, and fitbod.me/Ross to get 25% off your subscription, or try the app free for 7 days. These are two sponsors that I actually really do use every single day in my real life. Love them both very much. Want them to stick around and continue to be sponsors of our show so that our show can exist. So please support them so that in turn they will support us. Goes a long way. Means a lot. Please. And thank you. Again, details in the description of this episode for our sponsors. I'll be back later this week on patreon.com/Ross Bolin podcast as well, like we are every week, with an ad-free exclusive episode driven by hotline calls from our listeners where we answer questions, respond to hypotheticals, hear stories from our listeners, and respond to those, and talk about some other weird and crazy and funny shit as well. Me and Kade, our producer Kade, on patreon.com/Ross Bolin podcast. Until next time, remember, you are not alone. Peace be with you and also with you. Throw strikes, Ben!